Here we are, Algebra 2, 1-4, solving absolute value equations. This whole chapter should be quite a bit of review, but hopefully it's kind of like, oh yeah, I remember that, and we can keep going. Let's go through these notes here. The absolute value of a number is its distance from 0 on a number line. So, for example, if I've got the absolute value of -4, here's 0. If I go back 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, so there's -4. My distance from -4 to 0 is 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. My distance is 4. All right, let's do some examples of absolute value expressions here. So if I have 8.4 minus the absolute value of 2n plus 5, where n equals -7.5. Let's work this out here. So I'm going to substitute -7.5 in for n. 8.4 minus 2 times -7.5 plus 5. I'm going to treat my absolute value like a parentheses. So I got to do what's inside here first, and then I can work with what's out there. Now, 2 times -7.5 is -15, because 2 times 7 is 14, and then half of that, half of 2 is 1, so -15. 8.4 minus the absolute value of -15 plus 5. -15 plus 5 is -10, so I'm going to say -10. The absolute value of -10 is +10, because it's 10 away from 0 on a number line. So that means a -10 is going to be positive when I pull it out of the absolute value. I'm going to continue working over here. So I've got 8.4 minus the absolute value of -10, which is +10. And my answer then would be 8.4 minus 10, which is -1.6. Notice here that when the -10, I took the absolute value of -10 and got +10, I had this negative out here, and I kept it. Because it's not a negative and a negative, this became a positive. Absolute value of -10 is +10, so I kept the minus or the subtraction sign there, 1.6. All right, you try. So I got 2 for you to do on your own. X equals -2 is your value for your variable, and your expression is 4x plus 3, the absolute value of 4x plus 3 minus 3 1/2, and y equals -2/3, 1 1/3 minus the absolute value of 2y plus 1. And those are the expressions that I would like to be evaluated. Substitute the number, the value for your variable, and then solve as we did up here. Go ahead and pause now and get to work. All right, let's see how you did. Let's plug -2 in for x. Absolute value of 4 times -2 plus 3 minus 3 1/2. This becomes -8. -8 plus 3 is -5, so I've got the absolute value of -5 minus 3 1/2. This becomes 5. 5 minus 3 1/2 equals 1 1/2. Let's look at this one now. Plug in -2/3 for y. 1 1/3 minus the absolute value of 2 times negative 2/3 plus 1. Now, negative 2/3 times 2 will get me negative 4/3, which is negative 1 1/3. Negative 1 1/3 plus 1. So negative 1 1/3 plus 1, so the 1's are going to just go away. Negative 1 and positive 1 gives me 0, so I'm just left with negative 1/3. When I have negative 1/3, oh, let's keep going. Let's just keep writing that. Minus negative 1/3. That's what I have left in there. And so now I'm going to have positive 1/3, 1 1/3 minus positive 1/3 is going to get me 1. All right. Now, I do have a question here for this reflect thing. You see this sometimes, and I often don't say anything, but my plan is always to have a question right here. This one is, what is the difference between an expression and an equation? So think about that. What is the difference between an expression and an equation? Pause if you want to think about it, because I'm about to tell you. An equation has an equal sign, an expression does not. Pretty much it. An equation has an equal sign, an expression does not. We're going to talk about absolute value equations. If absolute value of A equals B, then A equals B, or negative A equals B, which is the same as saying A equals negative B. Looks like a little bit of a mess, but let's do an example, and I think that you'll catch on here if you don't remember how to do this. 9 equals the absolute value of x plus 12. This is what we're going to start with. Here's our equation. Now, what we do here when we have an absolute value equation, our first step is always to make two equations out of this. So this becomes 9 equals x plus 12 and or negative 9 equals x plus 12. So all I did is I just set up two equations, one that has positive 9 as it was, and one that has negative 9. And now I just solve as I normally would. I'm going to subtract 12 from each side of this one, and I get negative 3 equals x. I'm going to subtract 12 from both sides of this one, and I get negative 21 equals x. So my solution set here is x equals negative 21 and negative 3. All right, let's have you do one. 8 equals the absolute value of y plus 5. All right, so follow this example that we just did. Do this work, find out what y equals, and we'll talk about it. Press pause now and get to work. All right, let's check this out. What we always do when we have absolute value equation is we set up two equations, y equals plus 8 equals y plus 5, or negative 8 equals y plus 5. So I am going to subtract 5 from each side of this one, and I get 8 minus 5, which is 3. And I subtract 5 from this one. Negative 8 minus 5 is a negative 13. So y equals negative 13 and 3. All right, let's keep moving. I do have a little thing for us to talk about here to reflect. Can we ever have something called an empty set? And let me show you what that might look like. If I have the absolute value of x equals -4, what can we plug into x to make this equation true? What can I plug in for x to get -4 after I take the absolute value of it? Think about it. Nothing. There's nothing you can put in for x to equal -4 because whenever you take the absolute value of something, it's going to be positive. The distance from 0 to that number is going to be positive, whether that number is negative or positive. So in this kind of situation where you have the absolute value of something equals a negative number, no solution, an empty set. So you might have something like this, where there's nothing in between there. You can see it in all these different ways. So let's look at an example of how you might find an empty set. If I've got 3x minus 2 plus 8 equals 1. I'm going to, anytime I have absolute value sign, I want to get that by itself first and then solve for my variable. So I got to get this 8 out of here. So I'm going to subtract 8 from both sides. I end up with 3x minus 2, the absolute value of 3x minus 2 equals -7. So I've got the absolute value of something equals negative number. No solution. This is an empty set, no solution. Let's look at a couple more. -2 times the absolute value of 3a equals 6, and absolute value of 4b plus 1 plus 8 equals 0. Okay, so work these out and show me whether or not I'm going to get an empty set here or no solution on both of these. Okay, pause and show your work. All right, let's check this out. So for this one, I need to get this absolute value by itself before I can start solving for a. So I'm going to divide both sides by -2, and I end up with the absolute value of 3a equals -3. So boom, right there I know the absolute value of something doesn't matter what's in here. Absolute value equals a negative number, no solution. This one looks a lot like the one we just did in the example. I need to subtract 8 from both sides, and I end up with 4b, the absolute value of 4b plus 1 equals -8. Absolute value of something equals a negative number, no solution. Now, let's look at some other examples here. For this one, you really need to make sure that you're checking your answers. That's something we should always do and something I don't always talk about in the notes, but here is one reason why. X plus 10, the absolute value of x plus 10, equals 4x minus 8. So let's do some work here and let's see what this whole one solution thing is all about. So I've got the absolute value here. That means that I need to set up two equations. One is going to be x plus 10 equals 4x minus 8, and the other one is going to be x plus 10 equals negative 4x minus 8. All right, so let's solve this one for x. So I'm going to subtract x from both sides. And since we're in Algebra 2, I'm going to do two steps at one time. So I'm moving my x's over, and I'm going to get my 8 out of here too. I'm going to move my 8 over. So what I do to one side, I do to the other. My x's go away, my 8's go away here on this side. Now I've got 18 equals 4x minus x is going to get me 3x. Divide by 3, x equals 6. All right, there's one solution. We're going to come back to that in just a second. Now this negative here has got to get distributed here to both of these terms. So x plus 10 equals negative 4x plus 8. Negative 1 times negative 8 is going to get me a positive 8. Now this time I'm going to add 4x to both sides. Oops. Add 4x. Add 4x. You can subtract x if you want. I just don't want to deal with that negative, so I'm just going to add it over here. I'm going to subtract 10 from each side. And so my 10's go away, my 4x's go away. Now I've got x plus 4x is going to get me 5x's. And 8 minus 10 is negative 2. Divide by 5. And I've got x equals negative 2/5. Okay. Now what we need to do is plug both of these answers back up in here and decide if they are both okay answers. So if I plug 6 in here, 4 times 6 is 24. 24 minus 8 is going to get me 16. So that looks fine. That's 16. And then 6 plus 10 is 16. All right, that one checks out. All right, that one's good. Now let's try this negative 2/5. Okay, negative 2/5. So if I multiply this 4, I don't even have to do a whole lot of work on this one. If I multiply this 4 by a negative number, doesn't matter what it is, could be negative 1, negative 2/5. I end up with a weird thing with this fraction. I end up with a negative 8/5, right? Negative number minus a negative number, am I going to get a positive number or a negative number? Negative minus negative is negative. Negative times negative will get me a positive, but we're subtracting. Well, okay, I might have said that a little bit weird. Negative minus anything that's a positive. It would be negative minus a positive. Well, I don't know. What am I saying? What am I talking about? Negative minus 8 is going to get me, this is going to get me a negative number. Can I take the absolute value and get a negative number? No, I can't. Bob, that solution's no good. Okay, I said something, whatever. We're going to keep going. Okay, you're going to try one. 2 times the absolute value of x plus 1 minus x equals 3x minus 4. Now, I'm going to have you do this as a u-try, but before I set you off to go ahead and do this, I'm going to give you 2 things to do before, well, I'm going to set you up. So you're going to add this x to both sides, and after you do that, you're going to have this here equals something over here. You got to get this 2 out of here then as well. So you're going to divide both sides by 2. And then you will have the absolute value equals whatever. Once you're at that stage, then you set up your 2 equations like we did in this example. All right, you got to do 2 steps before you can set up your 2 equations. So go ahead and pause and get to work. All right, welcome back. So first we're going to add x to both sides. So I've got 2 times the absolute value of x plus 1 equals 3x plus 1x is 4x minus 4. Now I've got to get this 2 out of here, so I'm going to divide everything by 2. So this side gets divided by 2 right here. This side gets divided by 2 by distributing that 1/2 to both of these. So absolute value of x plus 1 equals 4 divided by 2, which is 2, x, and then negative 4 divided by 2, which is negative 2. Now I'm ready to set up my 2 equations. X plus 1 equals 2x minus 2, and x plus 1 equals negative 2x minus 2. Now we get to work. I'm going to subtract x from both sides, and I'm going to add 2 to both sides. So those x's go away, those 2's go away. I've got 3 equals 2x minus 1x is x. So I've got that one. I'm going to check that solution in a minute. Distribute this negative. X plus 1 equals negative 2x plus 2. And I'm going to add 2x to both sides. And I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides. And so I've got 3x equals 2 minus 1, which is 1. Divide by 3. X equals 1/3. So now I'm going to check to see if these answers make sense. So I'm going to plug this 3 in. Let's do it on this side first. 3 times 3 is 9. 9 minus 4 is 5. And then let's plug it in here. So 3 plus 1 is 4. The absolute value of 4 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. 8 minus 3 is 5. All right, that one looks good. Now let's try this 1/3 here. Okay, 3 times 1/3 is 1. 1 minus 4 is negative 3. So I've got negative 3 on this side. Now let's put this 1/3 over here. 1/3 plus 1 is 1 1/3. Gross. 1 1/3. 1 1/3 times 2 is 2 2/3. I'm going to write that down so I don't forget. 2 2/3. The absolute value of 1/3, 1 1/3 is positive 1 1/3, right? Multiplied by 2, 2 2/3. 2 2/3 minus, oh, I shouldn't do this yet, probably, should I, huh? Let's get this together first. No, it's not. 2 2/3 minus 1/3, right? That's what x was. Minus 1/3 equals 2 1/3. So I've got 2 1/3 equals negative 3/5. That's a weird mess, and it's not equal, so this is not a solution. I think I did everything right there, though, didn't I? 1/3. 2 2/3 minus 1/3. 1/3 minus 5, negative 5. Okay. Or negative 3. Yeah. Okay, so that's what happened. Bob, this is not a solution. This one is. And that is all that we have for notes today. So do a good job on homework 1-4.